So, just wanted to welcome Jessica to the offices here. So I really wanted to just get an understanding of how you came to be in the whisky industry, and also to give us a little bit of a snapshot of where you've come from and what career path has led you to where you are now.
Well, it's an interesting one, and probably one that's a little bit unusual in the whisky industry. So my whole background has been environmental. So my career to date, from kind of uni and masters onwards, has all been kind of global environmental goals and trying to track progress towards those goals.
Yeah.
So then I was moving back to Scotland a couple of years ago, and I took on another role in environmental charities. And throughout these roles, we've been pushing for kind of governments to do more. Charities are obviously trying to do their best, but more and more I was seeing that there was more of a push towards the private sector playing a role as well. So I started to really think, what kind of private sector role could I potentially have? And I'd moved back to Scotland, so the obvious one that was of interest was whiskey. And I met someone who works in the whiskey industry who had quite an environmental focus. So that really planted the seed. So after that, I just looked into whiskey and just tried to research whether there was a need for someone with my experience. And then was lucky enough to get the job at InchDairnie Distillery in January this year.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And so we're coming up to our year's anniversary there. What's your first impressions of the industry, where it's at, in terms of maybe comparisons to where you've come from?
It's actually using a lot of technology already to try and push kind of environmental and sustainability goals, particularly with reducing carbon emissions. So we see a lot of the big players moving to new technology already, which is helping the smaller players move in that direction as well. There's a lot of collaboration, particularly through the Scotch whisky industry, or Scotch Whisky Association. And I think that association is a huge help and a huge asset to Scotch whisky in general. It's something that I hadn't fully understood before getting the role. I knew that they had these goals, but I hadn't quite realised what a support they are. So it doesn't matter what stage you're at in terms of sustainability, the Scotch Whisky Association are helping you get through all of these different complex regulations, targets, etc. And even if you don't understand the international kind of frameworks that exist for climate and biodiversity, the Scotch Whisky Association distill that into something that you can understand. They'll run webinars, you'll have working groups.
Yeah.
So I think that is a core part of the industry that I see as a massive positive.
Let's talk about InchDairnie then, and tell me a bit about what the strategy is at the moment, or is that something that's evolving? Because you've obviously come into a business which has sustainability very much at its core.
As part of my role, I'm developing a more comprehensive sustainability strategy. So it falls under 4 main themes. We've got the first one, which is land and water, which is basically looking at our raw materials. So how can we use resources more responsibly? If we're thinking about cereals, water, the wood for the casks, for instance. The water is an obvious one. That's a huge topic at the moment and will be in the future. The second core theme is energy and emissions, and that's what our kind of bread and butter has been up until this point. So it's looking at what kind of energy you're using, clean or not, and it's looking at how efficient your energy use is and how you can reduce your energy demand. And that is, although we've focused on it a lot, we can't rest on our laurels. We've got to keep kind of pushing as the rest of the industry catches up. The third one is packaging and waste. This is one that has come later in our focus because we focused on the first two quite a lot about the whiskey. So we need to really meet the regulations that are coming into place. There's going to be a lot on packaging and waste. So that's something that we will focus on a lot in the coming years. And the fourth one of our strategy is people and partnerships. And so this might seem like an obvious one, but we need to make sure that we are not only looking after our own staff and creating a positive work environment, but sustainability isn't really possible without partnering with others in the supply chain. So you can focus on your own operations, but you've got shared goals with people in your supply chain, for instance, transport companies and distribution, farmers, packaging companies. We're all going to be trying to meet similar goals, so we're not going to be able to do it unless we form partnerships with like-minded companies. So that's the kind of wider portfolio of activities. that will form part of our strategy moving forward. So it's the 4 main pillars. But as part of that, one of the key things we're going to be doing is moving towards B Corp certification.
Right, yeah.
So there are a couple of whiskey distilleries who've already done it. We see this as the best certification scheme that exists at the moment that covers social and environmental goals. And what it does is it constantly pushes you to improve your performance, and it also takes into account a lot of the international targets and frameworks that exist, Sustainable Development Goals, the Global Biodiversity Framework. It pulls that all into targets for you. So if we are constantly striving to be B Corp certified, we hope that that will keep us kind of at the top of our game. It's a hugely comprehensive process, but it's one where the B Corp community are very supportive. So there's lots of people that you can speak to for advice, people who've gone through it already.
I was going to say, I think the whiskey industry is quite good for that collaboration piece, and we all know of B Corp certified whiskey distilleries. And
exactly.
I was going to say you've probably tapped into them already to maybe get some.
Yeah, already speaking closely with Mucklebrake at Port Leith Distillery and Bruichladdich.
Right.
So both a huge help, because everyone who's been through B Corp wants to help others go through it as well. It becomes a bit of a kind of championing process. But it's not one to be taken lightly. It is huge.
It's a big challenge.
Yeah.
And we mentioned InchDairnie has obviously already got a good foundation of progress on the sustainability side. Your role, was this a new role within their organisation, or was it something that they had before, they just needed to bring something new in?
So this role is new. Previously, it was just embedded in the beginning of the design of the distillery in terms of energy and water efficiency. But since regulations are increasing and there's a need for a wider portfolio of activities, they realised they need a dedicated person.
Right.
And so not all of this will fall on me to do myself, because it needs to be done by everyone. But part of my role is to try and embed it in everyone's roles and responsibilities.
Their day-to-day.
So I'll be supporting, I'll be educating, coordinating, but I won't be doing the nuts and bolts of all of it all the way through. So it's about trying to get everyone in a place where they can make decisions based on sustainability goals, and they don't need to come to me. So if you're choosing a packaging material, the people in the packaging team, let's say, they know what criteria to look for, and so that they can make a decision based on that. If we're choosing transport companies to distribute our goods, they know that there's a kind of potential screening process that we can put into place that can help them understand, okay, why are we choosing these companies? Can we do better? Are they a company that has similar values to us? And so that all these people in all these departments can make those decisions themselves, but we're not at that stage yet because it's so new to a lot of people and it's such a huge topic. I think it surprises people that it also includes social goals as well, that it talks about our own colleagues, it talks about community, partners. And so at the moment we need to just get everyone up to the same level with what sustainability means, and then everyone's equipped to kind of move forward, and then that means that we can move quite quickly with these things. But the regulation is one thing that is going to be one we have to keep on top of, because they're coming in all directions.
So sustainability needs to be something that's part of everybody's role.
Yes,
it doesn't just sit
definitely.
with one department within the organisation.
Yeah.
And interestingly, I was going to come on to the community piece, and how do you interact with the local community and local businesses who may not be suppliers but are still playing a part in your journey?
Yeah, so that's something that we need to do more of, actually. So we are a Fife business, and there's a massive focus in our brands on the fact that we secure local Fife barley and rye.
Right.
It's Fife grown, it's Fife distilled, it's Fife matured. We have a strong focus on Fife, but so far our community engagement beyond using local suppliers has been quite minimal. One of our key projects has been that we sponsor a couple of beehives that are on our distillery grounds.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of one thing that we've done that supports the local business and supports biodiversity on site. But as we move forward, we want to do more. Perhaps we volunteer for a local charity, or there's some other partnerships that we can make. But at the moment, it's been quite focused on the business and the supplier side of things and using local supply chains. There is also part of our kind of ethos is really sharing what we do, and whether that's within Fife or beyond, we want to be able to kind of make sure that we're not undertaking activities that we don't tell people about. And if we implement technology or new methods, that we share it. So next week, actually, I'll be in Fife talking about us moving to green hydrogen. And so that isn't whiskey focused, that's a Fife business meeting. And so we want to share our experiences of trying to move to green hydrogen with local Fife businesses and council, etc. So
they can benefit from the experiences.
Exactly.
It's a huge task to impact not just what you guys are doing in isolation, but the wider community piece.
Exactly.
It feels just a much bigger lens that you're looking at it through.
Exactly, yeah.
And in terms of, you've talked about B Corp certification, the new regulations, are those the big challenges that are coming down the pipeline for you?
I think they are a big challenge, but I think one of the other ones is we've been, as an industry and just in general, I think everyone's focusing on carbon emissions, and we have done, quite rightly, but the focus has been mainly on our own operations.
Right.
But for anyone that's been through a carbon footprint analysis, you realise that actually, at least in the whiskey industry, approximately 90% of your emissions are in what is called scope 3, which is your supply chain. It's out of your immediate kind of control. I think that is going to be one of the huge challenges, because we've, as an industry, focused on our own emissions, but it's much more difficult to tackle those ones that are in the supply chain, because we don't have direct control over it. And that is where the kind of partnerships come into play, and we need to see how we can support others to do the same. The second thing I think is a big challenge is biodiversity in nature is the next kind of big one that we need to try and tackle. And that is much more difficult because the metrics aren't really there. It's really difficult to measure.
Yeah.
So we've got carbon footprint data, that's tons of CO2 equivalents, it's numbers. You can get a baseline, you can work from it, and you can see your progress. You can also compare it to others and say, okay, how are we doing? But with nature and biodiversity, we're all having an impact, but we can't really measure it yet in a consistent way. And so there's a bit of a challenge on how we then address it. I think it is a good opportunity, because I think that nature, whether we're talking about plants or animals or just green spaces, that connects so much more with people. It makes sense. Numbers of tons of CO2, whether you say it's thousands or hundreds or tens of tons, it doesn't really mean anything to people. You don't look at something and think, oh, that's got 52 kilograms of CO2 in it. But you know it's a tree and you know you appreciate it. So we need to try and, I think there's great stories to tell, and I think we've got a good connection with that, but I think the big challenge is being able to actually measure it and then make kind of a positive impact.
I think the whiskey industry has always been good at storytelling, but this is a different aspect to it, and a different angle that we need to be looking at in terms of impact. So as you come up to 1 year in the business, what would you say has been a highlight for you? And also, going forward, what do you want to say after 1 year in the business? This is what I'm most proud of.
Good question. I think what's been really enjoyable is actually going to a distillery where from the beginning they have implemented measures that are hugely impressive for the industry and much more widely. So it's given me an amazing starting point. I think because my background has been in kind of nature and biodiversity, I'm quite excited about us trying to move forward with that, albeit it is going to be difficult. I think one of the biggest achievements is we have started doing a much more comprehensive carbon footprint analysis this year, which will be complete very soon, and it will mean that we're much more well equipped to do this every year, whereas before we just had a one-off. But we've got the measures in place that we all know as a team that we can do that without using an external consultant to undertake it for us. So again, it's kind of building the expertise into the company. I think it's just great to be working for a company where there's just a huge amount of potential in the future across so many different aspects of the business. I think being the sustainability manager and being at the beginning of this big process. I get to do absolutely everything. So I'm learning about all sorts within the business and within sustainability that I hadn't really expected. It's so comprehensive, and it's just been a massive learning curve.
You're touching every part of the business.
Exactly. So you might have others in different roles who might focus on carbon, one might focus on water, one might focus on biodiversity. I get to do all of that, so I have such a complete picture of the whole company, and it's just quite satisfying to be able to see all these opportunities across all of them. And yeah, use that as an opportunity to tell a story for the company in a way that we haven't yet, because we've just been focusing on energy.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you so much for coming in, and it's been great to hear how you've been getting on over the last almost 12 months, and wanted to wish you all the best with the next 12 months, which sound pretty busy.
Thank you. It's been great to chat.
Thanks.